What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Damn Right podcast. I'm excited to bring you something different today from my wonderful colleagues, Caravan Malssen and John Horodyski. They recently did an AMA, or Ask Me Anything, on the topic of governance, a topic for which the importance really cannot be overstated. It's also a topic that can, let's face it, be a bit on the boring side. But the antidote to that is two fun, lovely people like Kara and John enthusiastically fielding excellent questions from awesome people just like you. It was originally going to be an office hours sort of deal, but we had so many people sign up from all over the world that we decided to turn it into an AMA. We recorded it, and now I'm so very happy to share it with you on this episode. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that me and the Damn Right podcast will be chairing an event that you will not want to miss on May 7th at MoMA in New York City. The event is DAS, the Digital Asset Symposium, and the focus will be on DAM in GLAM. You'll be hearing from visionaries and practitioners in leading GLAM organizations. And I got to give a shout out to some of our amazing sponsors, including Aprimo, Allied Vaughan, Acquia, Iron Mountain, Aviary, and NBC Universal, just to name a few. Head on over to digitalassetsymposium.com to see the full list of stellar speakers, all of our phenomenal sponsors, and register for the event now. And remember, damn right, because it's too important to get wrong.
Welcome. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Caravan Malssen, and I am Managing Director of Go-to-Market at AVP. And I am joined today by my colleague, John Horodyski, our newest team member at AVP. So John's only been with us a little over, about a month now, right, John?
A month now, yeah.
Do you want to say hi and introduce yourself real quick?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening with this international audience. John Horodyski, Managing Director at AVP. I'm so excited to be a part of this Q&A, ask me anything, ask us anything on such great topics like governance. So happy Thursday, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Indeed. So thanks for being here. Really glad John could make it. So as you all probably noticed, we originally sent out an invitation that said we're going to do something that's a small group capped at 5 people. And then we had way too many people register for that to work. And we didn't want to leave everyone out. So we said, let's change up the format. Let's do an Ask Me Anything. And so you got an email asking you to submit questions in advance. Thank you so much for your questions. We are going to start talking through some of those questions. Now, I will say, since this is about governance, damn governance, we're really trying to keep focused on that topic. So questions that were a little bit outside of that, we may not be able to get to today. So we're really going to try to stay on topic here. But hopefully we'll cover some of those other questions in a future session. If you like this session and you want to have more like it, please let us know, because we'd love to know, is this good? Is this working? Is this helpful? Do you like it? So let us know. At the end, obviously, reserve your judgment. So we have some of those questions queued up, and we're going to talk through them. But we would like to invite some additional live questions. If you think of something you didn't have a chance to ask, or you just didn't have a chance to submit your question in advance, we want to, leave the opportunity for further questions. So please use the Q&A feature for that, if you don't mind. But we're going to keep this chat going. So obviously just chime in and, just put, whatever you think. If you want to contribute to one of the questions, by all means, add your thoughts as well. We want to hear from you. So please use the chat for that. All right. So to get us started, we have a poll for you, and we'd love to know the answer. So we're going to get that poll going. Okay. So the question is, are you doing DAM governance currently? Yes or not quite. Those are your only 2 options.
Answer wisely. Choose wisely, everyone. I think I know what the answer will be. What do you think, Kara?
I'm gonna stay silent on this. I'm gonna see what happens. I have a feeling, but who knows? All right. Oh, wow. We get a 50-50 here. That's
I do.
it's exactly. Whoa. Is that what you thought we'd see, John?
I thought it would be a little bit more in the not quites, because the not quite is like ugh, am I being graded on this, or can I just like, ugh? But first and foremost, thank you for everyone for participating. But well done. Well, this will help the conversation today. And for the not quites, as Kara said, like if you have some other questions to ask, not quites, this is the time. So kind of love that. Not quites. Well done. 50.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it was kind of a trick question because you're always doing governance. You just might not be doing it very well. So it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. It's just, maybe not intentional or not formalized or something like that. So there's always governance happening ish. I don't know. So.
Which begs the question, Kara, what actually is governance?
So yeah, we want to start with a little bit of a let's lay the foundation kind of question here. Nobody asked that question, but we want to talk about it just to kind of make sure we're on the same page. So my opinion on this for DAM, that this is it is the formalization of behavior around system and data. And it's like a combination of those two things. And that's why I think it's really interesting in DAM, because there is a lot of knowledge that is published out there in the world, in books, on the internet, et cetera, on this topic. And as it relates to our field, it's either kind of from a systems lens, IT governance, or from a data lens, data governance. There's a lot of both out there. But I think what's interesting about our world is it's the merger of those two things. It's the formalization of behavior around the system and the data. And so I have a couple of books that I'm going to share at some point here. But one of my favorites has this quote. It's a framework for establishing accountability, roles, and decision-making authority. And so it's kind of answering the question, who decides? And I think it's who decides three things: who decides strategy, who decides policy, and who decides standards. Because we need to know the direction, the priorities, and the scope. We need to know the rules, especially around the security. And then we need to have the standards for the data quality. And then, that will guide daily operations for the thing. And then it's also, who does what in that operational context, like who is responsible for what. It's really the roles and responsibilities is kind of how it's enacted and how those standards, policies, et cetera, are put to use. So that's my off the cuff definition. What do you say, John?
I concur. There is a comment. Was that quote from Lisa Welshman's book, Managing Chaos?
Oh, you are too good, Denise.
Well done, Denise.
Yeah, that is my favorite book. Yes, actually. So while we're on the topic.
You have that at your desk. Awesome. But look, okay, this is book of the week for all of us. We'll put that at the end in referencing or something.
Required reading, and we're going to put the link in the chat, but that is not the right screen.
We'll let her know. Oh,
here we go. This is the book, Managing Chaos, Digital Governance by Design by Lisa Welchman. This is not about DAM. As I said, there's not really like a book on this for DAM. It's like you have to look to adjacent fields. This is about digital within an enterprise. So it's a lot about like websites and other digital properties. And that's the lens that she's coming from. But everything in there, you just replace everything with DAM and it all applies. So wonderful, wonderful book. Highly, highly recommended.
I would like to say that with governance, I've always framed in the way of it's a way to mitigate and manage risk in an organization. Change is your friend. Change is constant. It's the one thing that's always going to happen. So how do we manage that change? Is there a mechanism for people to get together on a regular basis to talk about these things, make decisions? If you don't get together on a regular basis, things can happen off the cuff, on the sides. Whoopsie daisies. We've added 10 metadata fields because I just felt like it. We have an upgrade for the DAM. Didn't tell anyone. Whoops, there goes the asset. So you need the mechanism to come together as a team. And I've seen many organizations, Kara, you have as well. Those who have governance are far more successful for those who do not. So if anything can come out of today is, at the corner of your desk being like, oh, I'm going to buy that book potentially, or read it, or borrow it from your local library.
Mhm.
if it's available, and get some people together. And let's talk about governance. It's a good thing. It's not an option. You got to have it.
Mhm.
Really.
Mhm. Absolutely. So we got a lot of people here today coming with some challenges. And so I'm going to start with this first question, which is what are the most significant governance challenges for DAM admins? John, what have you seen out there? And we have a lot of those kind of in our questions and scenarios that are going to come afterward, but what comes to mind?
I mean, so many challenges. I mean, where does one start? I mean, there's lots of things we can consider here when you think about the challenges that one can face, and also we as a team. And many people on the call are both sort of solo DAM individuals and sometimes they're on a team. But it's the sort of the decision of who decides. Who is actually going to decide? And spoiler alert, someone somewhere has to make the decision. And it might be hard and it might be difficult and it might be necessary and it will be necessary, but someone has to decide. But sometimes when you're in a situation like this, it's like, is it me? Is it you? Who's going to make this decision? So that's certainly a challenge that does appear. One that I think, Carrie, you and I have seen before many times is the how do I say it? Too many cooks in the kitchen, or potentially not enough cooks in the kitchen. So governance is all about bringing people together. So certainly if you're on the call today, you're thinking, well, how do I get people to even contribute? Oh, they're there. You will find them. The vociferous ones who are saying it should do this. Come on board and join our governance team. Sometimes those people make the best advocates for creating change. So sometimes it's the not enough cooks, too many cooks. Also, is there a top-down decision-making process happening? Do we have people in certain aspects? Are we getting the information coming out from power users or users in the system quite a lot? Are you getting information coming down? What is the goal of this digital asset management system? Is it linked to something else in the organization? So that flow. So the challenge of not enough communication happening from both sides is something that I've seen a lot. So, and again, what happens if we don't do this? The negative opportunity for poor data. We always want to have quality, authentic, good data running through our systems. And of course, what else could that lead to? Poor user experience. Huge fan of UX and UI, user experience, user interaction. This can lead to these things, let alone the potential misuse of assets in an organization. So again, I will repeat myself, governance is good. It is.
It is good. Yeah, 100% agree with all of it. Yeah, and so in my experience where I've seen things really, really stall, a lot of the things you've already mentioned, John, like things will get stuck when there's no real clear, like final decision maker, like the one who cuts through the noise when it's sort of swirling and nobody's really deciding. Then it's going to get stuck and you're just going to be sitting there forever. Meanwhile, bad things are happening in your dam, right? Or nothing's happening, which is also bad. So that's not so good. And so, yeah, that's a bad one. And then, sometimes it's just where people are making independent decisions because there's also it's not that, yeah, it's a little different than the last one. There's just not that oversight at all. Like nobody's really doing governance scenario. Everybody's kind of uploading whatever they want, wherever they want, tagging however they want. Like it's really not the experience that you're trying to create in a DAM system normally. And so those are definitely cases where I see that. And then it gets to that result, as John said, like poor quality data equals poor adoption equals nobody likes the DAM equals wasted investment. And then it's like, what are we doing here? So yeah, governance is good.
So many good things. And governance is not an option. And for those of you on the call today who are in that maybe not quite category, there's no greater time than now. Well, maybe not now, in 20 minutes or 30 minutes maybe, but there's no greater time now to go back to some of your fellow collaborators and contributors at your organization and say, I think we should start some governance councils, something. Always an opportunity to start governance. It's good. All right. Kara, this is a really good question. I'm going to read this slowly. After an organizational merger, spoiler alert, happens all the time. So after an organizational merger, a system migration, and many, many rebrands, renames, and structural overhauls. Oh, golly, I'm tired. I finally managed to secure buy-in from teams from the other side of the merger to start utilizing our DAMs for institutional assets over SharePoint and Dropbox. Huh? What's the best way to sneak in governance concepts without making it seem as though it's adding more meetings to their calendars? Are there successful passive governance strategies in your experience and opinion? Great question. Wow.
A great question. And it immediately inspired me to share another one of my favorite books on this topic, Non-Invasive Data Governance. This is exactly what you're talking about. What is a more passive model? So here's a guy who wrote a book on that exact topic, because governance is often seen as like this kind of very heavy-handed, very involved, like we have a lot of meetings type of thing. It's going to take a lot of time. And yeah, so I want to plug that one. This one is more on the data governance side, but again, we are an adjacent field to data governance. So I do think it's, and by the way, am I breaking up at all? You
did for a few seconds.
Okay. I got that. Your internet connection is unstable thing. So that I would love to also point you to, because I think that it's a great book. And so what he talks about in that book is that, really what you're trying to do is overlay something onto things people are already doing. So if you're kind of formalizing behavior, these are with the people who already have behaviors around digital assets, right? So they're the people who are, they're creating them, they're uploading them, they're tagging them, they're using them. They already have a role to play here. So some of those people, maybe not every single one of them, but some of them will have an interest in participating in a little bit more decision-making to make it work best for them. Because it's very what's in it for me, right? And what's in it for them is if, you participate, you're going to get a better, your workflows will be better. Your use of the thing will be better. So kind of an as much as possible, like a minimal amount of involving them, but like make it as something that's already, part of their job. And it's not like you're doing an add-on thing. So I guess I would just also say, like, governance isn't just let's get together and have a whole bunch of meetings. It can be, but I think this book is interesting because he talks about it from a different angle where it's like, no, you have to do this anyway. And occasionally you have to come talk about how we're going to do it a little bit. And so maybe there are sort of ways to, and again, like maybe not use the word governance. And Lisa Welchman's book, she says, I wanted to avoid this word, but there is no other word. But if you need to avoid the word, just avoid the word and get it more about, hey, we need to make decisions around our metadata fields, or how do we update our taxonomy? Could you come to this occasional thing? So as much as possible, maybe that approach could be a start for that. So that's my initial thought on that question. John, what's your thought?
Whoever asked that question, well done. That is an excellent question. I love the other sides and this side and that side and the sneakiness potentially, or the passiveness. In organizations that do go through mergers, I mean, that's a whole webinar in itself, and that is always a challenge. At some point, you will all be just one side. So let's just make sure that is part of the, operational sort of priorities going forward. Let's be one side. And governance can start at many places that sort of, we sort of hinted at. And I love the fact that it was mentioned, Kara, about the, if it's not governance, call it something else. I had a client once that called it the Breakfast Club, and it was positive. Food was shared. There were jokes. If food is a great motivator, if that's a way to help you create governance in your organization, if you don't use that G word of governance, find another word. But it does have to have, it is mandatory that it's going to be there. But that whole idea of the, sneaky or passive ways to do it, for this individual who asked this question, let's get the merger happening. Let's, come together as one team. And then within the governance council, you can start making priorities for all of us, capital W, we, going forward. I would say maybe not passive, but start looking towards the future as a bigger whole going forward. Good question.
Yeah, really good question. And So I have I think the next one is kind of it flows in nicely to that one. Because it may, we're talking about how do we involve people? How do we get people, convince people? And so this question says, what would be the ideal approach to convince higher ups in an organization to create a data governance policy if one doesn't already exist? Especially if you're a young, recent graduate on a contract and everyone else is a seasoned professional. Yeah, you don't feel like you have much authority. What do you do?
So that's a very specific instance. Also, well done on that question. That's a great question. There's a way around these things. Ultimately, we're always kind of doing governance. I don't think so. First of all, everyone on the call today, give yourself some credit. You're already doing it. Sometimes we think it needs to be more formalized in some situations, but ultimately, we're already kind of doing it. But what we want to look for are champions within the organization. These individuals could be mid-level, maybe a little bit more senior level, but find out who they are. People who support the program, both financially, culturally, business-wise, business process levels. You want someone within the organization who are supporting these measures. Find out who they are. And there's nothing better than a well-calculated presentation of like showing them the risks and the opportunities, both sides of what you're trying to achieve, and let them know how many assets you have, what is the usage, what are people doing. This speaks to ROI, return on investment. You want to be able to show these things on a regular basis so people who are in those mid or senior level positions are able to start seeing, I'm starting to see some benefits here. And I think that's a wonderful way to begin that process. Well done you, by the way, on that journey. Please check in with us in a little while. I'd like to know, I think we would love to know how that proceeds for you. So that's my initial response to that one. Good question. Kara?
Yeah, I think, those are some good thoughts. I think to add on, I would say, what's the problem? And really kind of dig in on that. What's happening as a result of this vacuum? If you're seeing this gap in governance where it's not really formalized, what's the results? As John said, we have to highlight the risks and the benefits. So really zero in what's the problem, and then what is the ask? Like, what do you think needs to happen here? What's that gap specifically? I think you got to get specific, because if you just kind of start, ringing bells and saying we have no governance, and people don't really know what that means, or that just sounds like a lot, and they don't want to deal with it. It really has to be rooted in here's the problem we are seeing right now. It would be improved by, policies around X, or better standards, or, a strategy or whatever. So, make it tangible. Don't just say governance, governance, governance. I think that's where you lose people. You gotta kind of drill in on what's the issue here, and then what do we need to do about it? And you've got to find those champions. There's somebody out there who cares, especially if it's framed the right way and they understand oh, this is the problem and this is the risk. Okay. What do you need to do? And you have to make it kind of tangible again for them. What's in it for them? Why should they care? Just kind of approach it from that way. But you got to, again, start from the bottom while you look for those senior people. Just get together with peers that are a little bit kind of like your direct collaborators, as opposed to more of a leadership role, and just start trying to formalize behavior yourselves. And then as you need more support, you can start bringing it up, and maybe you're slowly building a team of champions from the ground up with you as well. So, that's kind of my initial also thoughts on that question. We have
You got a clarification potentially on that question. So for institutions that currently lack the budget or infrastructure to implement a DAM, what foundational digital asset practices should they adopt? Schemas, file organization strategies, documentation to ensure a smoother DAM integration in the future. Huh.
Well, I have some initial thoughts on that. Do you want to start?
No, I was going to say, it'd be good to know where you are in that process. It sounds like you may have a DAM-ish. Sounds like you might have a DAM, but you don't have everything around it, potentially.
Right. So my initial thought on that question, and I see a lot more follow-up questions, and I just want to also add, this is very much about governance. So we're really not going to get into, how to choose a dam or whether or not you should use certain functionality, et cetera. So I just want to like reiterate that point. But, thinking about this from kind of governance angle, if you don't have a dam system yet, but you have digital assets, right? That's why you're thinking about a dam. You already need to formalize behavior around those assets, right? There's already a need to establish policy about who can access what. There's already a need to establish standards around how are files organized? How are they named? Do you embed metadata in them? If so, what? What do we, that vocabularies are we going to use when we embed metadata? That kind of thing. That's essentially the same type of practice we're talking about in the DAM system. You have that on a file system. You don't need a specialized DAM to start formalizing those behaviors around the digital assets and their creation, their management, and their use. So that's kind of initial take on that one.
And I would say, just as a starter, for those of you on the call who might be in the process of potentially selecting a dam, it might be your first dam, start with governance right away. And sometimes people think it needs to happen afterwards. No, start right away. Many of the people who are helping you in this, the technology selection potentially could be people who continue on or are part of that governance council. So always feel that governance can start as early as possible, because he, she, they who are part of those in organization and the groups will be your advocates going forward. So
yeah. And if you're using spreadsheets, like kind of in the longer note, it says, we got spreadsheet. Absolutely. You got to govern the data in that spreadsheet, right? This is like, who gets to enter it? What are the values that goes where? You don't want everyone entering dates in a different format, right? Like there needs to be certain governance around that. So you start where you are, and the same things apply. It just gets more complicated once you have a really expensive system that maybe a lot of people are using. So that's the main difference. But otherwise, you still got to do it.
So again, for that recent young graduate, connect with Kara and I afterwards. We would love to hear where you are on that journey and going forward with all these good things. All right. Next question. Kara, how do you handle dam governance at organizations who do not have someone whose sole responsibility is dam administration governance? This seems to be common at some smaller organizations. And in fact, I would say it's common in lots of different levels of organizations.
It's really interesting how different staffing models are within organizations around DAM. So I see this come in two forms. Either there is a completely shared model, like when you say where the sole they don't have someone whose sole responsibility, I can interpret that as either this is completely a shared model and there's actually no one who's sort of formally in charge of this, or there is someone who's formally in charge of it, but that's a part-time responsibility of theirs. They don't have a full-time, they're not FTE on DAM admin. So those are different scenarios. So I'll speak to the second one first. If it's you have somebody who's actually responsible, it's just not their full-time job, that's actually better than the other model, in my opinion, because at least somebody is making decisions, right? Like sometimes the governance team is one, and it's somebody who's not even, full-time on DAM, right? Like they're just going to have to do it because they're the one who's been told you're in charge of DAM. It's 25% of your job or 50% or whatever. So go for it. And you have to start, working with your peers and collaborators and users to start to get their input to build up those decisions and document them as you go. And so that's just starting really, really small. But the other scenario, and this actually happens at a lot of larger organizations, is that nobody's in charge of the DAM. Maybe someone in IT technically is the product owner, but they're not really, the product owner. They're just like, we installed it. Here you go. We'll keep it up to date. You need an integration? So that's kind of it. And so, there's nobody who's like really kind of owning the totality of what is the dam. It's what is the capability, the functionality, and the assets inside of it. So in that case, it's like everybody kind of gets to do what they want. And I think that's just the worst case scenario. You just end up with a big mess. Like that is what is going to happen. The only way to avoid it is by having some very strong governance models that requires lots of people getting together and making lots of decisions on a regular basis, which is highly unlikely to happen. Those people are not going to participate at that level. Like that's a waste of everyone's time. They don't see the value in it. And so again, that model is going to devolve and your system is going to become a mess. And that's the whole thing you're trying to avoid with governance. So I don't know which scenario this is coming from, but I would say the case where it's like just a 50% person or 25% person, maybe they're overwhelmed, but they're going to probably be able to build a business case to get more support over time by using really great examples of like what, the needs are and showcase the usage. But that other case is going to fail, I don't know, 99 times out of 100, where it's just totally a shared model. So in my opinion, now it could be proven wrong, but yeah. John, what do you think about that one?
Well, I think you raise a great point about advocacy. So I think in this instance, and we don't know all the facts, but he, she, they has the opportunity to do more communication, to provide the ROI, and no one's ever going to get mad at you for being over communicating. And I think if you are potential in a solo situation, and Kara, you and I have seen many solo librarians, solo digital asset managers, it behooves you to take time to do more communication and to start reaching out, and slowly over time, you can start building that network out. And sometimes we might be making those decisions by ourselves, but at some point, hopefully the network will grow with you. So I would focus on spending that time doing analysis. We do love analysis, don't we? Look at those reports, how you're using it, get that communication out, and then just sharing it as much as you can, monthly, maybe weekly, whatever it can take. But it's going to be some work to get that communication out, but it is worth your while to get yourself known, get the dam known, et cetera, et cetera. It's
yeah, sometimes it takes time. I noticed we got a couple of things coming through the chat. Thank you all. Really appreciate that. And one of them is a new question. So we're going to come back, make sure we get to your question, Ralph. I'm going to add it to the list. And thank you, Khalid, for letting us know about he's the recent hire. And then Caetano shared a little bit more about the context of the question around if we don't have a dam yet. So it sounds like they are doing quite a lot on, governance wise without the establishment of an official system. So, which is great. I think that's a really great one. Okay. So then I'm going to go to our next question here, which is who should be responsible for the enforcement of governance to include rules, standards, best practices, review, compliance by dam users and stakeholders, and governance documentation. Yeah. Who owns the governing of the governance is how I'll put that.
Is that G squared? Is that governance with the 2 beside it?
Yeah.
Governance squared. Great question. Whoever asked that question, well, no, that's the short answer. No. It could be you. Who should be responsible? I mean, in my experience, I've seen many people play this role. However, the most common I see is he, she, they, who is that sort of digital asset manager. It can be different names. Some can be a product owner. It could be other names for that, but whoever is in that sort of role, the governance sometimes fall to them. In larger organizations, there could be a governance owner. And I mean, my 20-year career, I've seen more of those happen. But for the majority, I see whoever is that lead role, they are doing the governance. But I think I want to make a shout out for those who asked that, and maybe for others, is that you don't always have to be alone. And you can use things like content stewards, data stewards. If you're a global international organization, you can get interest from the different regions and people feed you information. So it doesn't always have to be by yourself. You can have your digital and your content stewards around you help in that governance. But from my experience, I've seen that individual in that sort of dam product, digital asset manager, he, she, they are usually the ones to be doing that governance. Kara, what are you seeing? What have you seen?
Well, I think the one who sort of owns the governance, the documentation of it, that, the communication around it, and make sure that it's, clearly followed and all the stuff. Yeah, it's the nominal dam manager. just because that is your job. I mean, that's part of that job, of course. You're not doing the decision making alone necessarily, but you're probably the one who's going to manage the outcome of that. And so, yeah, most likely. Now, I have seen this problem where because of the way titles are, where there's like, we kind of the DAM ownership is shared amongst like, there's a product owner and there's a, coordinator and there's a librarian or whatever. And then it's not clear, like, again, who's the DAM manager. And there can be a gap there because like everyone's not sure if it's their job. And then, the most seniorish person in that scenario is actually like way too busy to do it. It's not really like they're not going to do it. But then the people who really are full-time on it don't feel like they have the authority because it's actually that other person who's not full-time on it and doesn't have time. You got to have these conversations. Like you just got to ask the question like, hey, we really need to make sure we're documenting this, that, and the other, and, capturing our decisions. And I think you just start doing it. If you feel like there's a gap there, you should be the one to make the change. Be the change. Like just do it. And it'll shake out as to who really is, and if there's a problem, that'll come to the surface. But hopefully, you have the opportunity in time to do it, and or if you think someone else really should be, like, then maybe it's a conversation with them. If they're still not doing it, maybe it's a conversation with their boss, because like somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing to actually do their job. I think like this should be in someone's job description. It's actually one of their lines on their responsibilities. So make sure that somebody has it, is what I would say.
All right. Kara, I'll read this one slowly. Good question. Creating a governance framework for an enterprise DAM encompassing multiple teams, working in silos, but often sharing, copying assets across a wild west of a folder structure. Our folder structure is deeply nested and inhibits asset visibility. Oh my, and to reuse them to the organization. Millions of assets without metadata. Oh my golly, I'm upset already. Millions of assets without metadata. No documentation of processes. Oh my gosh. And lack of platform adoption. Where to start to create a cleanup plan, as well as a governance framework and strategy to assess all teams' content organization. Oh my word. Is this true?
First of all, I'm so sorry that you are dealing with that situation.
Virtual hugs to our visits.
Here in solidarity. So here's my harsh view on this. You don't have a DAM. You have a glorified file system. That's it. So if you want a DAM, you kind of got to start from scratch here. Like you're going to be starting from the ground up of building a business case for, we actually need to use the DAM as a DAM and not a glorified file system. We are paying way too much money for that DAM to be using it this way. So that is very expensive stuff that is not being utilized to its full capabilities and the full opportunity for your business. So this is where governance is absolutely a must. If you're going to have global enterprise DAM that is contributed to by multiple teams, where we absolutely must have some shared standards. Otherwise, like you said, you're going to end up with this situation. And so for that, I guess I would say, you probably need to figure out what's the operating model here. Like, I don't know where this lives. Like, there's usually, again, somebody who owns the DAM. Maybe it's in IT, maybe it's in marketing. I don't know. But so whoever's that owner needs to start making some of those decisions. Like, we're going to change the way we work in this tool as a business, but we got to start small. Like, and who's most ready for a change? Which of these teams are most ready to change the way they work and start to prioritize the users, the assets, the use cases, and start small. You're going to have to kind of go slow, build up some processes, some frameworks, some decisions around governance, around standards, roles, responsibilities, policies, visibility. This is all those decisions. That governance is about those decisions. And try to work out something that can be replicated to the wider, enterprise. I would probably take that approach rather than like, let's burn it to the ground and start fresh, because I would just try to like work, through one team at a time and build up the model that can be, then replicated out to others. So what do you say, John?
No burning to the ground. Not on Thursdays.
We don't
No burning to the ground. I would first have a drink. You choose whatever that could be in the vessel, but I would have a drink. I concur with everything you said. I would just maybe add a few extra things like go do a good content analysis. What do you really actually have? Do you really have that much? Or is it like Dreamweaver files from 1998? I don't know. But maybe go and look what you really do have. And why no metadata? Yikes, that's a thing. But then also, if you do, following Kara's approach, and you're going to go towards a dam, you may not have to have all that million in the dam. You might say, you know what? Let's take everything from 22 to 25. And the rest, we will get intern students from the best, library schools across the country, and they will do that as a summer internship program. I'm just speaking off the cuff here. But, content analysis will help you go, it's actually, okay, maybe it's not a million. Maybe it's actually just a few 100,000 because it's only current assets. So, what do you have? Where is it? Why do you have it? Literally, why do you have this? Do that content analysis and then have a second drink. No, that's terrible. I want to know don't you want to know who asked this question? Whoever this is, please connect with Karen afterwards. We want to.
You don't have to raise your hand in here and say it.
No, we'll do it afterwards, but.
Right. I think this is a big, big, big one, obviously. But I think, as John said, I think it's doable. You've got to see what's in there, why, what do people really need? What do we really want in the dam? There's some strategy there that is part of governance, is to decide what is this dam for and who's it for and what kind of operating model do we want to have? Try to get rid of the dumping ground scenario. That's just not going to be your best bang for the buck. Good luck. Let us know. All right. So moving on to a slightly different take, which is a really different part of the conversation, but there's a question of the integration of AI to dam systems should be part of governance. Agree? John, agree, yes or no? And why?
What's AI? No kidding. AI is the most popular word of the last 2 years, potentially, maybe even a little bit more than that. Well, this goes to scope. So if this is AI within your dam system or even external, you with the governance council, whatever you have there, you get to sort of decide what was within our realm. And if that is within your realm, then absolutely yes, you should be talking about AI. Are we going to use it in the dam? What fields potentially in the metadata will be affected by the AI? Who's going to do it? Have we tested it out? These are unknowns, and it is the most popular thing. I mean, I know organizations as you, Kara, who there are policies around AI in terms of, are we using this? Are we allowed to use ChatGPT? Looking at you, creative services, communications, who are writing things that they may or may not should be. But I do think there needs to be governance around AI, and I think it behooves all of us in this industry when we are creating digital content on a regular basis, photos, images, text, all those good things. AI is a part of this. It's not going away. And so I'm a big believer that AI should be a part of governance. So the question is, should it be a part of governance? I agree. I concur with that question. Kara.
Yeah, I would also agree. It needs to, I mean, again, like if governance is about decision making around strategy, policy, standards, and then how, roles and responsibilities for daily use. So AI is going to touch on all of those things. So from a strategy perspective, it's why do we even need this? What are we using it for? What are our use cases? Because I think that's the most annoying thing is that people like AI, talking about AI as if it's like this monolithic thing that does one thing, but one thing is everything. It's none of that's true. It's, what's your use case? What exactly do you want to do? What are you hoping it will do for you? And then, figure it out. So that's governance right there, just that decision making around what to prioritize the possible use cases are. And then of course, policies, when should we use it for, in what scenarios, what should it have access to, what should it not have access to? What data can we share or not share with our AI tools? So yeah, there's absolutely a lot of policies being developed, usually at a pretty senior, like IT level, CTO, CIO-ish level of, an enterprise policy around AI and what you can and can't do with it within the business. That is governance, that is policy and governance. And so you work with those people to find out what the enterprise policies are here. And then, yeah, from the standards view, like if, you're going to be using AI for like tagging, for example, how is it going to like align with your taxonomy, your vocabularies and stuff like that? Lots of things to test and evaluate. And so, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I would also give a shout out to why we actually have things like governance, because the governance is there for allowed to have discussions like this. So AI, we get together as a team and go, so it's here, it's coming. What do we do about it? I remember years ago, Kara, you remember that time as well, when we heard about this thing called GDPR. And some of us were like, oh, is that for me? Is that for you? I don't want to do it. Who's going to do it? You should probably talk about it. I was attuned yesterday to the European Accessibility Act, which is coming into play at the end of June. You need to be prepared for that. Governance is a great forum to talk about these issues that are going around ourselves going, is this for me? Do I have to be aware of this? If we do, yikes, what do we do? So this is why we'd have governance, to acknowledge all those other good things that are circling around our content and our users and our customers, et cetera, et cetera. So governance is good. Governance is good. Also, that's a plug for the European Accessibility Act, because it is coming in June. For all those of you on the call who are coming, European nations, I hope you're ready.
Get ready. All right. Next question.
Next question. You get some, look at these long ones. This is fantastic. All right. I'm going to go slowly. DAM 1, stores only production masters and image selects serving archival and preservation needs. DAM 2 maintains a complete repository of all the assets, including production masters, images, selects, camera originals. So which system is the system of record? How would the metadata reflect this distinction? And how are these systems used by internal productions and communication groups? Oh my, DAM 1, DAM 2. Not thing 1, thing 2. Not Dr. Seuss. This is DAM 1, DAM 2.
Maybe we need to make the little guys with the little shirt. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I am going to take this. I'm going to wear my archivist's hat because I think this is coming from archives perspective. Somebody's got, the word preservation is showing up in here. So sometimes when we've worked with organizations, they're going to have multiple repositories because there's a belief that we need a separate preservation environment. That's not the DAM, because don't know why. Because that was somebody's idea and they're not going to let go of it. I have worked with far too many organizations who have tried to do this and not done it very well. If you try to have two systems that have the same stuff, but one of them is just kind of like the preservation place and the other is the access place, the one that people actually use, and there's not entire, sync between those two systems. And then you have people going to two places to look for different things, and it's not clear what's in what system or what's the system for. And it's chaos, it's redundancy, it's poor user experience, and it's very costly to maintain, extremely difficult and costly to maintain. So I am of the school of thought that in most cases, now there are exceptions to this, in most cases, where this is coming up is in smaller cultural heritage organizations and nonprofits, which already are limited in resources and limited in funds. And you don't have the people or the money to manage two systems and replicate assets across them. So I would be much more in favor of a single DAM that has all these assets, that has the capability, preservation functionality that you think is mandatory. And what I would say is look very, very closely at your preservation standards and what they define as functionality, because most preservation is policy, governance. Thank you very much. And so if you look at the, so if you look at the functionality, there are many dams that can help you with that in terms of functional and storage things. But how that's enacted is just policy. So you can kind of do it with a dam, without a dam. You can use it a file system. You can just stick stuff in storage, whatever. Preservation doesn't require a specific tool. It's that policy, decision making around, what does preservation mean to you, and how are you going to enable it? And then what are the tools that are going to be needed to use that? So this is kind of a roundabout question around governance, but it is, I think it is a governance question at the end of the day, because there's a strategy component here, and then there's also a policy question here. But I don't like that two system situation. It's difficult.
It's opportunity for error. And the whole thing about governance is to reduce risk and to reduce those errors. So I'm definitely concur. I don't like the two dams. However, Kara, you and I have seen in multiple organizations where they have not only dam 1 and dam 2, but spoiler alert, 3, 4, 5, let's keep going. And it's like, what?
That happens.
And that does happen. I saw once an organization, we'll go nameless, was up to 60. I'm like, and stop. That's too many dams. Bless you all, but stop. But the other point that I think is interesting to talk about too is system of record. Now that is something, librarian, archivist, hats on. I mean, I was in library school. We always heard about systems of record, and we do get that often in terms of which is the source. So again, when you do have multiple sources, again, it goes back to the governance. If the metadata is even different a little bit, there's opportunity for error, and I just want to reduce error as much as I can in my life. I don't know about you, Kara. I don't want that.
I do. Yeah. And so, and when that's confusing and it gets really messy. Now I will say there's a scenario where you have kind of a PAM-like system, like a production asset management or like MAM-ish scenario, and then a dam. And sometimes that's okay, because they're really have different functions and they are serving different people. But at the end of the day, one of them is the system of record, and you just make that decision. Again, that's the governance decision, is define what's the system of record. Where should people go for X? So work in progress, maybe in one, finals in another. We don't want people going into work in progress unless they are working on the work in progress. Therefore, they don't have access to it, and it's limited to the creatives who need it. And then, final assets go in the final system, but then you got to give some incentives to those creatives to put it in there because they don't want to, and they're too busy working on their next project. So there's some work to do there, but that scenario I'm okay with.
Yeah. Get it to work. So there is a live question from Tracy, and Tracy is asking about, do we feel the same about the dams and mounds? No, that's an interesting one. The dams, the PAMs, MRMs, there's so many other words that...
Yeah. That's what I was just saying. Like, yeah, no, I think that's okay, because they're, again, different use cases, serving different users, different needs. As long as you define the scope and the role and the recordness of each system, I think it's fine.
It's so important. When you start your dam process, what goes in this, what does not go in this? I have seen so many mistakes made where people are like, just throw everything in. It's like, no, don't do that. What goes in, what doesn't go in? And if it doesn't go in, where does that go? I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but where does that go? So, good one.
First, policy decision. The first one.
What is it now?
Here, governance policy decision number 1. Okay, we have...
And Ben, thank you. We have 6 minutes left.
6 minutes left. Do we want to go to the question that Ralph asked earlier? Because I don't want to miss that one. So let me ask that one. How would you approach working with a new team that lacks digital asset management experience, acknowledges they need help, but resists good suggestions and even best practices because, quote, this is how we've always done it. Oh, familiar story. How would you build trust and encourage adoption when they seem reluctant to rely on the expertise they hired? What do you think, John?
So we start with that. How do you build trust? I mean, that sounds like a dating app in some ways. But so first of all, we've all seen those experiences where, the hands are folded and it's like, I know it's good. We've always done it this way. I ain't going to change. Well, trust, how is trust built? Trust is built over time. You got to show them these things, training sessions, little simple things like that, communication, in an increase in communication to slowly win people over. Though it does happen every once in a while that there's like some type of a resistance, but it goes back to that unification and communication abilities and opportunities to sort of say to the organization, we as a team are going to be successful for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and slowly trust can be built. Show them how well it's working. Look at the effectiveness. We have saved so much time. We have saved, we're making money again, whatever. Show them trust is built over time. That was my answer. Good question.
Yeah, I think the show is the key word. Like show, don't tell. Show them something cool. Show them something that they've never thought of. Show them something that improves their lives and makes it easier to do whatever it is they need to do. And be careful. Obviously, you don't want to come off too heavy-handed. You don't want to, be arrogant about it or whatever. Like you have to kind of know you read the room and know how to talk to those people, but show them the way forward, I think is the approach. Tricky, but yeah, good question. We got so many great questions, and I'm so sorry we couldn't get to them all because there were a lot, which we love. So that means there are more questions and we can do it again. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, night, whichever. Good night. Go to bed to those of you who are very late places.
Bye, everybody.